Over in the US, Joe Biden is celebrating 1 year in office. We say celebrating, but there's very little to celebrate really. A pandemic that refuses to go away, multiple diplomatic failures, and an escalating military face-off in Ukraine. Biden's inauguration seems a long time back. Do you remember his promises? America is back, he said. Diplomacy is back. Build back better. All of it sounded amazing, but 1 year later, that's all they are, promises, unfulfilled promises. The American people are clearly having buyer's remorse. Just look at the approval ratings. After 1 year, Biden is at 41%. Trump was at 40%. So for all the talk about being the opposite of Trump, Joe Biden is hardly doing better. In fact, both men are among the least popular presidents. Barack Obama's average approval was 57%. George Bush, 68%. Before him, Bill Clinton, even he was at 49%. What will worry Joe Biden is the trajectory. He started the presidency on a high. In July, 59% Americans approved of his work. By September, that fell to 50%. This was after the disaster in Afghanistan, and now it's 41%. In many ways, Afghanistan was a turning point for the US president, where it all went wrong. But 5 months later, he stands by that decision. No apologies, no regret, he says.
There is no way to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years easily. Not possible, no matter when you did it. And I make no apologies for what I did. I have a great concern for the women and men who were blown up on the line at the airport by a terrorist attack against them.
So no apologies on Afghanistan. What about the Wuhan virus pandemic? That was his second big challenge. Biden said he would lead America out of the pandemic. But the numbers tell a different story. Under Trump's presidency, around 435,000 Americans died from COVID. Under Biden, 441,000. I think we can all agree that Trump's pandemic response was disastrous. It was borderline hilarious. So how is Biden's performance? Even worse. That too after vaccination began. Because Biden could not convince his people to take the jab. You can blame vaccine hesitancy or political divisions, but the fact is, thousands died under Joe Biden's watch. His messaging was right, his policies were based on science, but the results are almost the same as Trump's. Clearly something went wrong, something that the president does not want to admit.
On COVID-19 is that we're in a better place than we've been and have been thus far, clearly better than a year ago. We're not going back to lockdowns. We're not going back to closing schools.
To top all of this, Biden could soon be a wartime leader. Things are not looking any better in Ukraine. In fact, more weapons are arriving. The Russians have moved new reconnaissance helicopters to the border. America is asking Baltic states to ship US weapons to Ukraine. So the situation is escalating on the ground. What are the diplomats up to? US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Berlin. He met with ministers from France, Germany and Britain. They're all putting pressure on Russia to pull back. Sanctions, talks, weapons, everything is on the table. This is shaping up to be Biden's biggest challenge yet. In Afghanistan, it was about pulling out soldiers, a yes or no decision. Plus, he could blame his predecessor, Donald Trump. Same with the pandemic. Trump was so bad that Biden got away with a bare minimum. With Ukraine, that is not going to work. It's not a yes or no call. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. And the entire world is watching. Right now, Biden does not think Putin wants war, but he does not rule out a stern test.
I think he still does not want any full-blown war. Number one. Number two, do I think he'll test the West, test the United States and NATO as significantly as he can? Yes, I think he will. But I think he'll pay a serious and dear price for it that he doesn't think now will cost him what it's going to cost him. And I think he'll regret having done it.
Strong words there, but two can play at that game. The Kremlin has hit back at Biden's comments. They say it will further escalate the situation in Ukraine. So for all that bravado, Joe Biden has given Russia exactly what they want, an excuse for escalation. To sum it up, I think two words best describe Joe Biden's first year in office: missed opportunities. He could have nurtured Afghan democracy, but he chose not to. He could have revived the Iran nuclear deal, but he failed to. He could have pushed for equitable vaccine distribution. He could have ended the pandemic. Again, he chose not to. Elections, you see, do not determine a leader's legacy. What they do after the elections, that's what determines their legacy. And going by the first year, Biden's trajectory is not inspiring. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.